A side note, that song, "I Have the Tiger," that was like the #1 hit song when I was born. So, so I feel like everything just came full circle for me in that moment. You know what I mean? I'm Taylor. I'm an addict. Um, fuck, man, I'm just grateful. Like being at this retreat this last day. And being able to connect with so many of you guys and having intimate conversations and like seeing this gift of recovery that we get to live in, man. And it just like sometimes it hits me differently, and I'm really feeling it this weekend, man. Like my heart is just full, like, and it's full of gratitude for this life that I've been given, for the opportunity to help serve with so many of these guys in here, and to love others and to be loved, you know, and and what is our message? The message is that an addict, any addict, can stop using drugs, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. And like, that's what I've found in Narcotics Anonymous. I have found a new way to live, right? And for a long time, like, I didn't think that I could live life without the use of drugs. I really didn't. I thought my ends were going to be jail. I was going to kill myself, kill someone else, like all those things. Like from a very young age, I believed that my ends were always going to be shit. You know, I didn't have hope for my future or hope that like I was going to make something of myself, you know. And so when I came here, I was broken, and I didn't know how I was going to do this. And the members in this fellowship have taught me how to love myself. Like they've showed me how to be a man in here. You know, they showed me how to pay bills. They showed me how to have integrity, like through service work and through the steps and through all these other things. Like I've become the person that I am today, which is so far from the man that I was when I showed up. I was not a man. I was a boy when I got here, you know, and my clean date's February 8th, 2010. So I just celebrated 15 years clean. And and that's through grace, man. Like through grace. And you know, there's like another speaker said one time, you know, the difference between like grace and mercy. And it's like grace is getting something that I didn't deserve, and mercy is not getting something that I did deserve. And I've been shown a lot of fucking grace and a lot of mercy, because if I hadn't been given those, like by grace, I've been given this life in Narcotics Anonymous and the opportunity to come in here and get clean and create everything that I have. And mercy is the fact that I should have spent a lot of fucking time in prison, right? And a lot of other things could and should have would have happened to me as a result of my using and as a result of my choices when I was out there. You know, I hurt a lot of people, and I did a lot of things that affected other people's lives, right? And I didn't pay the price for all those things. I got away with a lot of that stuff, right? And I carried that guilt and shame in here with me. So, you know, like through the process of the steps and being able to make amends through the community and do all these other things, like I don't carry that weight on my shoulders today, but it happened, right? And I never forget that grace that I was shown, right? And the mercy. And so like I'm big on the literature. I'm going to bounce all over the place. Anybody that's heard me share knows that I'm what I'm about, right? And for a lot of you, I don't know if you've ever read the beginning of our basic text. There's a picture of our symbol, and there's a couple paragraphs in there, and I encourage you to read it if you haven't. And I'm not going to read through all of it, but my first sponsor always drilled this into my head, you know. Our coin, the four sides of the coin, God, self, service, and society, rise to the point of freedom. And the broader the base, the higher the point of freedom. So how free do you want to be? And I'm asking you guys that, but I'm saying that to myself too. How free do I want to be? Right? Because my freedom is a direct result of the amount of work that I'm willing to put into this thing. Like if I just come in here, it's just like if I go to the gym and I watch everybody on, you know, working out and expect to get fucking muscles, you know, it's not going to happen. And so when I come in here, like, I got to do the work, and I got to be willing to apply this shit in my life for it to work. And it also says the outer circle denotes a universal and total program that has room within it for all manifestations of the recovering person. And what that means is our circle encompasses all manifestations of my disease, right? So I don't care if you're like, whatever you're battling today, it may not be dope, right? Because through my years of recovery, like, I've had to fight a lot of battles, and they had nothing to do with drugs. It was all just manifestations of my disease, whether it's chasing women or money or whatever it is, just to change the way that I feel. I've been there, done that, right? And it'll all lead me back to that same fucking place where I'm isolated and I think that I'm a piece of shit and I'm not worth it, right? And I'm just searching for that next thing that's going to make me feel good. And I'm using them until, the walls cave in on me, right? There's just never an end to that loop, that obsession that I got to have more, And from the first time I ever did dope, that was there. That was like that was freedom for me, I picked up dope, and I didn't have to worry about what you thought about me, how I looked, how I sounded, how any of that shit was out the window. And I can remember from being 6, 7 years old, out on the playground, telling guys like, oh yeah, my dad's got a Ferrari and fucking, we've got all these like expensive things and whatever, right? Why was I doing that? Why could I never just be okay with who I was? Right? And so that plagued me my whole life. And when I came in here and I put the dope down, like, that shit was still there. And it's still here. It's up to me to continue doing the work to figure out why that stuff comes up and how it shows up and plays out in my life and what I'm going to do about my problem, because like the solution is here, and what I found in Narcotics Anonymous is the solution. It's something I chased my whole life, and I found it. You guys have shown me that, So yeah, I got clean 15 years ago. I came to Narcotics Anonymous broken. My heart was just crushed. Like, I had come back from a relapse. I had broken up with this girl. My life was over. Like, I had no idea how I was going to make it. And I'll tell you, my first year clean was no pink cloud. Like, I thought about suicide all the time. I was too chicken shit to do it, but I thought about it. I just wanted the easy way out. I didn't want to fucking hurt. And boy, did I hurt. Like, I'd go to meetings and I would cry and I would cry, and I listened to you guys tell me, like, keep coming back. Like, let us love you until you can love yourself, what I heard earlier today, and you guys gave me hope, right? And through the process of working the steps and believing and trusting in my sponsor, life started to change for me, right? My view of life started to change, and positive things started to happen in my life. And I started to believe that I could really do something different with my life if I continued to show up here and do the work that you guys were telling me to do. And I saw it as evidence in your guys' lives, because I believe that you all came from the same background that I did, and guys are buying houses and getting married and living these dream lives, right? And to me, like, that was always a fantasy, and it started to like become a little bit of reality, like having my own bank account. That was a fucking miracle. When I walked in there and they're like, because trust me, for a long time they were not giving me a bank account, because I was the guy depositing blank checks in there and getting the money out. You guys know what I'm talking about. But I learned how to live in Narcotics Anonymous. Like, before that, I was reduced to the animalistic level, and so when I came in here, willing to do whatever it took, like, the solution was presented to me, and I jumped on it, and working the steps. Like, I've been through the steps several times, and each time I go through them, there's another level of change. But that first round of steps was like probably one of the first things that I had ever completed for myself in my whole life. I didn't complete school. I never completed a job. I'd always fucking quit or get the bag, and then after I get a little paycheck or whatever, and I'm out. Right? I always give up. And so when I completed that 12th step, that had even more meaning to me. Like I fucking completed something, and not only that, but by the time I had completed the 12th step, I got to see how this program had completely reshaped my life and how I was able to apply that in my life in all my affairs, right? And some of those things, like I talked about a moment ago, like God, self, service, and society, like touching on all four sides of that and getting involved with the service work and going and doing panels, and doing the step work and not being a fucking menace to society and stealing and doing all these other things, holding the door open for somebody and, like not letting them give me too much change at the grocery store, all that kind of stuff. It may seem small, but it was really big for a guy that would fucking manipulate and take advantage of any situation he could for his whole life. Like the fact that I could just be honest about what I was doing or what was happening in my life was a fucking milestone, because my whole life I had to hide who I really was or what was really going on in me. So the steps completely changed my life, and again, I worked them multiple times, and I'll tell you, man, like like we don't have like we never know what's in store for us, right? And we've all got our own journeys to go on, and for whatever reason, like I've experienced a lot of pain and a lot of loss throughout my recovery, and when I got here, I just wanted to be this man of integrity, right? I wanted to love and be loved and show up for others and do all these things, and I got to start doing some of that, and and when I had about 6 years clean, my little sister got sick with cancer, and we talk a lot about powerlessness, like over the drugs and over SNAP, but like powerlessness on a completely different level is when somebody that you love and you care for so much is diagnosed with this cancer that you have no control over, you have no power over, and you get told this person's going to die, and there's not a fucking thing you can do. And where was my higher power in that, right? Like I'd worked these steps, like I was living a good life, and like I was doing everything right, and like why is this happening to me? And like I'd be lying if I said that I still wasn't mad about it, you know. And I got to sit by my sister through all of it. I got to take her to her doctor's appointments. Um, I got to just sit with her, and I remember one time I'm sitting there like, oh, how are you doing? And what's going on? And blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I didn't ask you to come over for any of that. Like, I just wanted you to spend time with me. And that taught me a lesson, man. Like, and it was said to me, before, it's not about me, right? And somebody that I know in the program said, it's not about you, Taylor. Like, and it changed my perspective on it. Like, how am I going to show up and how am I going to love this person? Because I can get so caught up in how's this going to hurt me and affect me and blah blah blah, this and that, right? And through the process of working the steps, I was able to shed so many of those layers of myself that wouldn't let me love or show up and just be that guy that I always wanted to be. And I did that for her. Like, I have no regrets about how I showed up for my sister. And like, that's what Narcotics Anonymous gives us, right? And another close friend of ours was just diagnosed with cancer, and she always shares, like, we're here for the magic and the tragic. And I hate to be the one to break it to you, but the good news is we can fucking stay clean through all of it. Like we have a choice today, and we have a program that we can work, and we can change who we are so that we can show up and be those men in those situations, right? and we learn to love and support each other and be those friends and brothers and sons and daughters, all that for these people that we love and care about. Because I'll tell you, when I was out there getting loaded, I was none of those things. That sister, kicked me out of her house. And I remember her standing there with tears in her eyes, like, I can't help you anymore. And you're not welcome in my home. And so, like, God presented me that opportunity to come back and share with her and love her until the very end. And through that, she had a son and a daughter, and I have several nieces and nephews, and her daughter was my firstborn. She's like she's like my golden niece, and her and I were really close and have stayed really close. And I'll tell you, this last summer, she had asked me to officiate her wedding, and because that little girl's grown up now, and a few months before her wedding, her little brother, my nephew, committed suicide. And again, man, like I can come to God and I don't have to hate God. I don't have to be resentful. I don't, just like, how do you want me to show up? Like, how do you want me? Like, how do you want to use me in this? Because like I don't fucking understand, and it's not up to me. Like I shouldn't have some like sense of entitlement. Like just because I'm clean, life is going to be perfect. Because that's not how it is. We come here and we live life on life's terms, right? So we don't get to decide how it plays out. Unfortunately, that's not reality. Yes, I will say there's been so many moments throughout my recovery, like I've worked steps on a cliff in Hawaii watching the sunrise, and I've experienced higher highs than I ever did with dope. And I was able to buy a fucking home in Narcotics Anonymous, right? Like all these things, I'm able to look at myself in the mirror and love and accept the person that I am today. Like I'm able to be in a relationship and not be a dirtbag and have integrity and not like have some side shit going on. Those are all things that I learned how to do in here, like by watching other men do it and by just continuing to practice what I'm learning in my life. And so, like I said, I got to officiate my niece's wedding last summer, and if you saw my niece, she is like a spitting image of her mom, and I'll tell you, like at the end of my sister's life, there was a moment where she couldn't really talk, and she was just bedridden, and she wasn't talking to anybody for a few days, and I went over there to kind of say my goodbyes, and I remember like, because this was like, I was so mad at God for doing this, but I still knew I needed God. It's like a fucking relationship. It's like you're pissed off at him, but you still need him around. So and I remember just praying like God, I just ask like for this opportunity to say goodbye to my sister, and I had sat with her all night, and nothing. And the next morning, as I was getting ready to leave, like she opened her eyes for a second, and I got to tell her, how much I loved her, and I just told her like I'll always be with you, we'll always be together. And she nodded her head, and like, and you want to talk about like grace again, and like God showing up for me, and just being present in these moments again is a direct result of the work that I've done in Narcotics Anonymous, See, because when I was younger, and it was all about like using and changing the way that I felt, and running and hiding and all of that, like I couldn't show up for a moment like that, you know. And when I was 18, I watched my mom die, and my solution to that was to go get loaded, you know. And I used that as an excuse to run and hide and do all sorts of heinous shit. And like, who are you to judge me? Like, I'm hurting, you know. Like, I lost my mom, so of course I'm gonna drink to oblivion and use and cause all this destruction. Like, of course I'm gonna do that. Why wouldn't I? You know. And so like, having that experience when I was younger and then coming to Narcotics Anonymous and doing this work, I get to see how I show up completely different in all these different areas of my life, you know? And it's not like I've been fucking perfect throughout my recovery, you know? Like, we grow through what we go through. And it's not like my first, you know, few years here, I wasn't like hurting people to try and make myself feel better, using women or acting out in all sorts of different ways. But I'll tell you what changed and what happened for me was I continued to work these steps and my behavior was no longer okay. You know, like, I was no longer okay with going into a fucking meeting and staring at 5 different women that I had slept with in the last few weeks, and all those behaviors that I was acting on, like, it didn't feel okay, and I knew that what I was doing was wrong. Like, I gained a conscience in here, you know. And you want to talk about spiritual awakenings? Like, I've had multiple spiritual awakenings, and that's just this, where I get to see myself showing up and doing something or being something different than I ever was. But I'll also tell you, like, if I'm not willing to fucking come here and do the work and keep showing up for myself, like, you can have a spiritual awakening, or you can go to sleep, right? And you can drift off and stop doing the work and stop doing all those things. And I've been there. You know, after my sister passed away, there was a really dark period for me. And I had gone through a breakup with a girl, and I was isolated, right? Because that's where my disease loves to get me. Like, I love to isolate. You know, I enjoy this. This is great. I'm probably going to need a couple days to recuperate from it, you know? But my disease loves to get me where I'm alone, thinking that I could fix myself by myself, right? And I will fucking convince myself every time that the solution's up here. And it's not. The solution is not up here. Like, the solution is working the steps, connecting with my higher power, getting honest with you guys, showing up, regardless how I feel. And again, like, the most important of those, and like one of the most important lines in our basic text says, honesty is the antidote to our diseased thinking. You know, and like, how fucking profound is that? You know, when I'm going through something, or I start with that obsession in my head and the disease is starting to work on me a little bit, it doesn't matter what I'm obsessing on, you know, like, oh, that thing's going to fix me. I'm going to buy that. That's going to make me feel better, you know, or this person or that person's going to change how I feel. Like, if I'm willing to get honest about it and invite my higher power into this situation, then I've got a lot better chance of not acting out on whatever the fuck it is, you know? So through this process, man, like, one of the biggest things, like I have not been very good with relationships. And when I say that, like, I don't like letting people in, you know, and especially women. I like having women around, but I don't want them coming too close because I'm going to get hurt. You know, my experience had shown me that clearly, you know, like losing my mom and losing countless others in my life. Like, I had convinced myself and had this dialogue in my brain that if somebody got too close to me, I was going to get hurt, you know? And so not only have I done the step work, but I got outside help, you know, and through that, like, I was able to free myself of a lot of the guilt and shame and a lot of the remorse, or things that were stuck with me from childhood about my relationship with my mom and things like that, right? And I spent a lot of time alone, and like what finally happened was like God put somebody in my life, and when this girl came into my life, and I was like trying everything I could to push her away, or keep her out here at arm's length, and until the point that she was basically like, yeah, you're gonna, like, I'm fucking out, like I'm not gonna hang out for this, and in that moment, like that, I finally like had this realization, another one of those spiritual awakenings, like it's okay to let somebody love you, and that was a fucking major epiphany for me, because I again liked pushing people away for so long that I didn't want to let somebody in, and in that moment, like I made the decision that I was going to let her in, and from that moment forward, like I'm able to have a relationship today that's completely different than any relationship I've ever had, right? And it's not only because of who that person is, but it's because of who I am, and not being scared to like reveal who I am, like all the good and the bad, or not keeping secrets and not trying to be some mystery or any of that, and like letting myself put all my cards out on the table, because that shit's not easy, like I don't know about you guys, but like for me, like I feel like there's a level of fear, like when I come in here and get vulnerable and tell you guys who I really am and what I really am, like down to the core, but my experience has also shown me that like I have never fucking come in here and told my truth and been shy and been told to leave or not loved or accepted or any of that. Like I have found all those things in this fellowship, in these rooms, right? And the people that I surround myself have shown me that over and over and over again. And that's what I found in this relationship, and I'll tell you, man, like throughout working the steps, like like my dad is like my dad, I love him, but he is not the man that I want to be my dad. And I don't know if that makes sense to you, right? But I have this idea in my head of who he should be and this expectation of who my dad should be in my life and how he should show up. And, like, I just want to hear, like, hey, fucking good job, or hey, like, I love you, or any of that. And I don't get that from my dad, right? And through the process of the step work, like, I got to practice some acceptance, and I got to come to this place where I understood that, like, my dad doesn't have to be the man that I think he should be. I can love him and accept him for who he is and what he is, and love him right where he's at. And I've got two brothers that are fucking far from that and don't understand that type of thinking. And again, it just reminds me like how valuable this process of recovery it is, and how it plays out in all these different areas of our lives, right? And how we can rebuild and shape these relationships. And so having said that, like this girl that came into my life, you know, her dad and I like have been building this relationship, and so I get to have these conversations and like find myself going to this guy for advice, right? And asking him like, well, hey, what would you do in this situation, or what would you do here or there, right? And like what a gift from God, like I get what I need here and then some. I always do. And that relationship is something that I wanted so badly, right? To have that role model or somebody like that in my life to be able to communicate with and share my successes and all that stuff with, Because I come in here and I could share with you guys and all that, but I think everybody understands the connection between your parents or your siblings or the people, your loved ones, it hits a little bit differently, and so I'm grateful for that, man. And there's one more thing here. This is out of Living Clean. We no longer use our disease or where we are in our recovery as an alibi for bad behavior. Our recovery is constantly enriched by what we learn. We make peace with ourselves, with all we have gained and lost and learned and become. We find gratitude for the events that bring us to this moment. The process is a power greater than ourselves, and the reward for staying with it is a feeling at peace with who we are. So throughout my recovery, like I've walked hand in hand with God. I've been on the mountaintop and I've been down in the valley, right? But like one thing has stayed consistent. Like I never gave up. I never gave up on that connection. And I think that is one of the most powerful things we have in here is your connection with a higher power, whatever that looks like. You know, and through the process of the steps, like that's changed a lot over the years, but that connection is always there. And like that is the most valuable asset I have in my life today. It is in the morning, I make it a point to do my little gratitude list and to turn my will over, right? And acknowledge that I'm not in charge. Because when I think I'm in charge, like I got a whole lifetime of fuck ups that show what happens when I'm in charge or when I think that I know what's best for me, you know, and there's so many good things out of that reading, you know, where it says we no longer use our disease or where we are in our recovery as an alibi for bad behavior. And that shit had to go right when I got here because my first sponsor, you know, he told me right away, he said that excuse, well, I'm just an addict, he's like, that's fucking gone. You're not going to use that with me, you know, because it's so easy to say like, well, I just fucking, you know, stole some money from this person, or I fucking cheated on my old lady, or whatever, because I'm an addict. You know, it's like we are addicts. That is a fact. But we also come in here and we admit our powerlessness, right? And like that opens us up to recover from that disease of addiction. And so it's up to me to identify what those things are so that they don't fucking take over my life and I don't start hurting the people closest to me, whatever. And it's not always the easiest. Like I know as men in recovery, like everyone in here has their own battles and things they go against. And some of the men that I love the most in here, I've watched them walk through those situations where they make those mistakes. And I make those mistakes. We all make those mistakes, but we all come back here and you either get honest or you don't come back. And I could tell you from my experience, like that is what happens. You know, this disease doesn't stop working on us in one way or another, right? Like I was born with it. If I look back to when I was, I don't know, 6, 7 years old, man, I remember getting high. Like I would literally get a high from going into the store and filling my pockets with candy and walking out. I remember that feeling, that fucking rush. And then shortly after that, it was stealing smokes, you know, an army crawling under there and getting cigarettes out of the thing. And you know what I mean? Like as my disease will progress wherever it goes. And so, you know, I'm grateful for some of the conversations I've had this weekend. You know, I was just talking to somebody about this earlier. Like, I have to be vigilant about how my disease is working in my life. Like something that looks this big, or that's not a big deal, I'm just going to let that slide, right? 6 months later, what does that look like in your life? You know, that innocent little fucking hello from the coworker, you know, that you know, I know, you know, it's not so innocent. And that shit turns into an obsession. And then next thing I know, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to like maybe talk to her on the side or whatever. Because my disease fucking feeds off that sneaky shit, you know? And there's like a little bit of a high within that high. And so it's up to me. Like I have to stay connected to my higher power. I have to stay connected to this program so that I can get honest with myself about the way that I'm fucking acting in all my affairs, right? Because it just takes one slip up, and next thing I know, I'm fucking headed down that road, and I've experienced it, you know, and in some of those moments, man, where it seemed like all hope was lost, right? That I was broken beyond repair, you know, after my sister had died, and I had broke things off with a girl that I was engaged to, and I had just bought this new house, right? And I remember sitting there thinking about taking my own life, with close to 10 years clean, 9 years clean. And I'll tell you, none of the money in my bank account or any of that other outside shit didn't mean anything, right? And what my disease wanted me to do was fucking run. And in those moments, like, God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. And members of this program showed up at my house and were like, no, you're going to go to a fucking meeting right now, And those are the things that happen for me. Again, grace, like, because I don't feel like I deserve that shit, And I've been given so many chances in this lifetime, like, over and over and over again. And so I don't know, man. I'm beyond grateful to be here and be a part of this committee and this fellowship. I could really go on and on for hours about, like, all the change and all the different things that have happened in my life. But I will tell you, like, if you're new, you can read in What Can I Do? Like, it will tell you everything you need to know about staying clean. The solution is here, and the solution is simple, right? We just complicate the shit out of everything, We read those readings at every meeting, at every event, at every speaker that comes up, And have you ever said, man, I've heard those 1,000 times. And then you'll hear it shared and you hear something, and you're like, wow, I never thought about it like that before. It's just like reading the basic text. There's times I go back and read it and I'm like, I don't think I've ever read this before. I've read the basic text I don't know how many times, right? It's because we grow and we change and we see things through a different lens, right? We're not the same people we were when we got here, And so that's another reason why I keep doing it, right? Because I keep growing and changing and seeing things in a different way. So, yeah, I want to thank everybody on the committee, for allowing me to come up here and speak. I want to thank my higher power, really. It's hard to sometimes put it into words, the amount of gratitude that I really feel, But this journey that I've been on, from when I started here to where I am now, like, I could have never dreamt this life that I'm living, And it has nothing to do with what's going on out here. It's what's in here. Like, I have freedom from myself. Like, I have found a new way to live. Like I have lost the desire to use long ago, right? And I am not plagued by the obsession to use drugs or act out on a manifestation today. That doesn't mean that shit can't change tomorrow, because like I said, if I'm not willing to do the work, like, my disease will show up in any area of my life, So that's why I continue to keep coming back, I'm grateful for the members that let me follow their taillights, I'm grateful for the newcomers that show up and remind me, those streets, like, I'm 15 years removed, man. The streets are fucking wild, right? Like the drugs that are out there today and what I see happening out on the streets, like, talk about gratitude, man. Like, each and every one of us sitting in this room, right, with a choice today. Like, we have a fucking choice, And think about how much of our lives we didn't have a choice. Or we weren't given a choice when you're sitting in that jail cell. Like, you didn't have much of a choice then, right? And we have a choice today, man. And the freedom is in this book. The freedom is in this fellowship, right? So like, how free do you want to be? That's all I got. I'm Taylor. I'm an addict.